Before we begin, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss our full review of these phones coming very soon. So the P20 and P20 Pro represent a huge departure from the design language of just about any previous Huawei phone. It's all about curved glass now with beautiful mirrored finishes and glass panels that blend almost seamlessly into the metal frame. There's a standard loadout of colours available, including your usual blacks and golds, but the one that's really worth talking about is its absolutely gorgeous twilight gradient, which shifts through turquoise, blue and purple from top to bottom and shimmers as it tilts through the light. Whatever other issues you might have with the P20, you can't deny that in this colour it's definitely the prettiest Android flagship around. The P20 has a 5.8-inch LCD, while the larger, more premium and much more interesting P20 Pro steps it up to a 6.1-inch OLED display. And yep, that is an iPhone-style screen notch up top there. Some people will hate this, but I don't find it all that distracting. It's not unnecessarily large, just big enough to house the earpiece, sensors, and 24-megapixel front camera. That front camera enables face recognition too, which we couldn't test ahead of launch today, but Huawei says it can unlock the phone in as little as half a second. Both P20s run Huawei's Kirin 970 processor, of course, the same chip that powers the Mate 10. Besides that, there are some differences between the P20s, an extra couple gigs of RAM in the P20 Pro, as well as water resistance and a bigger battery. The P20 should do fine with its 3400 mAh cell, but the Pro steps it all the way up to 4000. That's the same number as the Mate 10 Pro, so given the other hardware similarities here, the P20 Pro should match the legendary battery life that we've seen from that model. And that brings us to the meat and potatoes of this phone, the unique camera setup that really sets the P20 apart. The regular P20 has dual cameras, a 12-megapixel RGB sensor, plus 20-megapixel monochrome sensor with new, larger 1.55 micron pixels for improved low-light performance. But what's truly unique is the absolutely bonkers triple camera setup of the P20 Pro. Let's zero in on what's going on in this cluster of components in the top left corner here. The P20 Pro has a 20-megapixel monochrome sensor like the regular P20, but the main sensor, the RGB sensor, is an enormous 40-megapixel unit, a huge sensor by smartphone standards at 1/1.7 inches. That new tertiary shooter is an 8-megapixel 3x telephoto camera with an f2.4 aperture and optical stabilization. An array of extra sensors is on board too, including a color spectrum sensor for more accurate white balance and laser autofocus. This combination of cameras lets Huawei do some unique things that we haven't really seen before in a smartphone. Thanks to the new telephoto lens and high-res main sensor, up to 5x hybrid zoom is supported, eking out more detail where other phones might produce a blurry mess. It's not review time just yet, but already it's clear the P20 Pro has probably the best telephoto camera around. And the 40-megapixel main camera can help in low light too, in tandem with the AI hardware inside Huawei's Kirin processor. The P20 Pro uses a kind of super sampling, combining 4 pixels into one, equivalent to 2 microns in size, to work its magic in darker conditions. Huawei has expanded the number of scenes that can be recognized by its AI scene detection, and the neural processing unit has also been drafted in to help with a really impressive new low light mode. Now, instead of having to stand perfectly still or use a tripod, Huawei's AI stabilization system can take continuous exposures up to 4 seconds, and then use the NPU's intelligence to pull out a bright, clear image. The results aren't quite the same as one long exposure, nor is this as instant as just a regular photo, but in my brief time with this feature it was very impressive. It looks like it'll be great for those times where you have the opportunity to take a longer exposure, but not necessarily the additional hardware. Some other camera features we didn't have time to fully test ahead of today's launch: AI composition, which should nudge you towards improving the way your photos are framed, for instance by identifying group shots or pulling out horizon lines. And Huawei is on board with 960 frame per second slow motion capture as well, though like the Samsung Galaxy S9 this is limited to 720p resolution. Really, we're only scratching the surface of what this camera can do here, but I'm impressed so far, so be sure to subscribe and check back for the full review. The software side of Huawei phones has always been a bit of a mixed bag, but at least now we're up to Android 8.1 Oreo in the new EMUI 8.1 build. Huawei boasts of significant performance improvements in this version, responsiveness up 60% and smoothness up 50% compared to EMUI 8. Some of that seems to be thanks to slick new animations in this version. In any case, we'll have to wait for a full review to judge overall performance. EMUI 8.1 otherwise sticks to what we already knew from the previous software versions. This is a highly customized version of Android with a few weird quirks, for instance the way music player notifications are handled. In any case, there are a few other improvements too. Huawei's on-device AI can now tag more than 100 different types of photos and rate and organize them in the gallery with its own aesthetic score system. So that's our first look at the Huawei P20, building on the core hardware of the Mate 10 with an incredibly beautiful design and a formidable loadout of camera features. And it could well be the antidote to a relatively safe and unexciting upgrade cycle from Samsung this year. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.